Welcome back, people, and welcome to another episode of the USL show. I am back after a long hiatus. I have been in a hibernation, or at least I wish I was in a hibernation. As of today, I just got done teaching 3-year-olds, which, believe it or not, they complain less than some of y'all complain about refs. Talking to you, Ford Masson fans and Cheney. Were you on side? I don't know. None of us have a good camera angle. We're all guessing just like the refs are or whatever. I don't know. I He probably was on side, let's be honest. He was on side by like 2 yards. Anyway, John, how you doing?
Doing well. I just want to kind of chip in with the referee stuff. I know we didn't talk about this in terms of a topic to have in there, but how about Charleston just kind of losing their collective minds last week, and then Louisville having the time of their lives clowning Ben Bierman. So always here for that.
Oh, we were looking for stuff to talk about. Why not talk about in a minute about
Yeah.
Pierman and Danny Cruz just really going into the beef of USL because we do not get enough coach beef in the USL. But someone who has been around some of the angriest people on the planet, returning from Boston, Ryan Allen.
Yeah, doing well. Boston was a lot of fun. Fenway Park, much smaller in person, but a really great crowd. Saw a walk-off grand slam for the Red Sox over the Monster, which was cool. And Freedom Trail definitely recommend. With the best part of it was pointing out the 300-year-old building that is now home to a Chipotle.
Oh, that thing went viral this week. There you
Yeah,
go.
I walked by it and I was just like, oh, a Chipotle, I guess. And you're not kidding about the Dunkin' Donuts. They started the tour in City Hall, and there was a Dunkin' Donuts literally on the four corners of City Hall.
What?
Boston's a lot of
Okay.
fun if you get a chance, though.
Good to know.
Harvard was cool. I got able to go in the football stadium.
Nice. Now, to the bottom left corner for people who are not or who are just listening to the podcast, someone you're going to hear the voice of, someone who feels probably just as defeated and down bad as I do right now about their football club. Phil.
Hey, I don't know, if there's anything noteworthy to talk about tonight. So, yeah, I guess we'll see if there's anything to discuss. But from my perspective, it was a pretty boring weekend. Nothing to really remark on.
I mean, if a USL match doesn't happen on ESPN Plus, does it actually happen?
It did.
I
think
it felt very back to the halcyon days of YouTube streams. Yes. Although I was missing the chat function.
I know.
I'm just saying, if they can take off the geo lock, they can take down the lock on the chat. I want to see all the mad and crazy Brazilian fans that are always plaguing those chats, because every time I would get on, it was incredible. The Brazilian fans that were so into the USL, absolutely love them. And I know the USL and Argentina guy, like, he is passionate. He's everywhere. I love that guy. But he has nothing on these random Brazilians that would flood the Islanders, like the what do they end up changing their name to? Not even just like hair.
Penn
like,
FC.
Penn FC, that's right. Going from Penn FC versus Ottawa Fury. And they were just Brazilians everywhere. Is there a Brazilian on the team? No. They don't care. They're here. They're here for the footy. And it was fantastic. Bring it back.
I will say, people were kind of raising concerns about ESPN Plus and a future TV deal and everything. Like, if this is just a one-off week where there's issues, I kind of love the accessibility of YouTube. Like, lower the paywall once in a while just to get some eyeballs on it. And I don't know comparatively what the effect was on the viewership, but as someone who's like rapidly changing between games, trying to take in as much as possible, had a great time with the YouTube optionality there.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube allows you to, you can just open it every tab ever, and you can just endless tabs and just I have 8 screens. Like ESPN, you can do multi-screen, but not that many screens. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's great.
If we're looking at just kind of the last week or so when they had the Oh, sorry, I was looking more at the highlights, but yeah, I'll be curious live stream if they still have any of the recorded history on how many people reviewed some of the games.
Well, we wanted to talk a little. We didn't have this on here, and I knew that there was something big we were missing.
Yeah.
We will get to a tactics show. We will get to a tactics show. Actually, was Lou City versus no, it was not one was discussed. So we're going to talk about Lou City versus Charleston because let's just go ahead and set the air, right? And I can pull it up later if we need for reference. But it's at the very end of the game, Charleston gets the game winner. It looks like the goalkeeper for Lou City gets fouled ish. It looks like he just runs into a defender, doesn't quite get through the body. They call the foul, and the tap in does not count. Here's the unfortunate part, and I am just going to give my personal opinion straight away. Is it a foul? No. Is that foul given in every single game and most people don't bat an eye? Absolutely not. Like that foul, that exact call happened several times a match, every single match, and no one bats an eye because normally the game winner is not scored off of it. That said, it's not a foul.
I think the bigger thing for me was that the Charleston reaction was as if the game was stolen from them and Louisville gets every single call in the history of refereeing. Whereas in actuality, the Battery were outplayed over the course of the 90 minutes. They were sort of lucky to be in the situation they were in. And don't let that take away from the fact that it was a very questionable call. The refereeing is very inconsistent in this league. But the rhetoric you got from Pierman about almost this league-wide conspiracy to give Louisville results because they're always one of the better teams just kind of smacked of immaturity isn't the right word, but you expect more from someone like Pierman, who's really a rising star of a manager in American soccer. You want more professionalism. You want a different response instead of just crying foul, for my taste. But then again, terrible call. It needs to be said.
And even on the night, it was still 14-14 in fouls. So even objectively speaking with the stats, it showed that it was even. And if the league is trying to rig things in Louisville's favor, they're doing a very poor job at it. Louisville is currently 5th in the Eastern Conference and Charleston is 2nd.
I love that this didn't get included in the highlights package of the game.
Yeah.
That is so USL to me, is this really big talking point is for those who watch the highlights would not know that it happened. So yeah. Classic case of burying. I don't know. Do you guys think pro refs have some clause in this deal that they worked out at the 11th hour where they can't be criticized or have any contentious decisions shown on YouTube?
I don't think. I mean, the only thing is this is something that actually bothers me a lot on the highlights package. They'll show the second yellow of there, but they will never show the first one.
Yeah,
which
never do.
It's so bizarre, but I have a feeling that it's one of those things that they don't want to have that just replayed. I'm going to go on wild assumption and say that's a USL thing because I just think it is. And let's just be dead honest here. No one's paying the refs extra for calls in this league. Do you know how badly the refs want to be paid extra at all? Some of these refs are just dying for a changing room. But I do want to, someone who's been on the show a couple of times, Benton Newman, and I think it's Zach Allen. They do a show, and I just want to listen to this quote from Danny Cruz from Ben Pierman, and it is, Danny Cruz just lays in, and we did not. We can find the Ben Pierman quotes, but it essentially says they've been to 7 straight USL East title games, and they have this big fancy stadium. They're the darling children of the USL. They'll do anything they can to protect him. This is the response from one Danny Cruz.
Chatting with Danny Cruz, Louisville City's head coach, here on Soccer City, ahead of a quick turnaround for his team. They take on Rio Grande Valley on Saturday night at Lynn Family Stadium. Let's turn to last night, though, Danny. A good result for your team, I think, ultimately against a quality team, the Charleston Battery, in a 1-1 tie last night, though you did have a goal lead, and Charleston had to come from behind to tie the game. But I'm going to ask you about the final moment of the game. There was a goal that went over the line for Charleston, really with literally the last touch of the game, but the referee blew his whistle, called a foul, waved it off, and then whistled for full time. So there wasn't really another opportunity to put the ball back in play. And your opposite number last night, Ben Pearman, had some interesting comments. He said basically that when you're Louisville City, you're the big glamour team, you're the champion team playing in the nicest stadium in the league is going to favor you some. And I thought that was very interesting. So just give us your thoughts. You don't have to necessarily address that head on if you don't want to, but just your thoughts on that last moment of the game, whether it was a goal or not, and ultimately the results last night, 1-1.
Yeah, first and foremost, referee blows the whistle, calls a foul. I think he might have got it wrong. But for me, we've had so many instances this season for us where the whistle hasn't gone our way. I think for this guy for Ben to say the things that he said is pure nonsense. I'm not surprised to hear him say, this kind of, those kind of things. It's well within his character. There's no doubt about that in my mind. If you think someone picked up the phone, called the referees and said, "Hey, make sure that Louisville City gets the calls," that's bullshit, And so, for me, I think it's nonsense. But I'm not surprised that he said it.
What?
It's beautiful. Yeah, this is why we love this league.
We were just waiting for a
Wow.
Conte Tuchel-esque rivalry anyway.
We need the handshake. Show me the handshake at full time.
What's funny is
Go
go ahead, John. I was saying, what's funny with the Pyramid and stuff is across his two previous games with Charleston and with Memphis, is he's unbeaten against Louisville in the last 3, and Charleston is unbeaten in 3 of the last 4 against Louisville.
When have you heard When have you heard a manager in the championship call into question the character of another manager? That's wild.
That him calling
well within his character.
Right. That's the quote I wanted to highlight. He's just straight up saying this guy's a whiner who's gonna point at outside sources if he loses a game. It's crazy stuff.
Which,
Cruz.
again,
This is
that comes
WWE level.
Which again, this comes from Soccer City Radio out in Louisville. That again, Benton Newman and Zach Allen, they do incredible stuff. And I'll be honest, the moment that they put on Twitter, we're talking to Danny Cruz immediately after the game, I knew it was going to be fireworks. There has been no question that these two have not liked each other. This has been a long time brewing. But this is what gets me about this. You have to remember what he says was on live radio. This was not on a podcast that he could go back and edit and fix it. He said it live. He cut a promo and dropped it live. And I was so here for it. We have been missing coach beefs for so long. We get kind of player beefs, but really only players know about it. And you get kind of player versus team beefs that you kind of know about it. This is about as public as the USL, I think, has ever gotten on just outright beef of, I don't like this guy, he's a whiner. Just to call out the character of another coach is hilarious.
Amazing. That's the best thing that's happened in the league so far this year. I'm willing to say that.
Please let both of these managers still be at their clubs during the winter meetings, because I want to have that just kind of underlying undertones of oh, you cut me at the buffet last night, man.
Oh, man. That's amazing.
I mean, imagine having to go to winter meetings, or they're having to just do anything, right? I mean, it's impossible that these two are ever going to get a trade off, right? that these teams cannot trade with each other. There can't be a transfer fee. There's no way they let this go, that they let that slide. And if they do, it has to be going through like director of football, right? It can't be coming from them. They can't get on the phone together. There's no way.
That'll be box office the next time they meet up, though. I'm praying we get a playoff game between
no games this
Louisville and
season, but
Charleston.
there's the chance we get a playoff game.
Oh, that would that would be absolute box office. And the league should market it as Cruz v. Pierman 3 or whatever. Like,
That's the next influence YouTuber boxing.
Right?
Yeah.
Ooh, who do we have? Danny Cruz or Ben Pierman? Like full on fisticuffs. Who are we taking?
Danny Cruz, professional athlete versus
Clarice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's a
mean-
mismatch. It's a Zuck Elon mismatch.
Wait till Ben Pierman starts going through me to leak all of his messages about how actually Danny Cruz ducked out of the fight. Oh man, look, the match itself was what it was. I'm sorry, Louisville or Charleston fans, we can talk about the foul, but we all know that this is the more important talking point. It's just fun. It is just a whole bunch of fun. Let's go ahead and move on, and let's go ahead and move over to the tactics show, which, you know, I am going to start throwing this out here, John. I know you did one Legion tactics show, but I'm tired of seeing Legion in the tactics show on the wrong side of this.
Legion was about 40 seconds of this one, and then it was Miami. So I'm only taking half of the blame here for bullying
Hey,
you.
look, all I know is that I have to watch this before I put it out there to know what it's talking about, and I have to relive all of my worst nightmares constantly. First, it was Colorado Springs, and now it's this. I'm just constantly in pain.
I'm
Let's
like
go.
a 3-year-old.
Yeah, like a 3-year-old. All right, go on to this tactics show.
And the 4-4-2 that carried them to
I
two
don't
big
think I
wins
started the
this
right
week.
place.
Hello and welcome
My
into
bad.
the USL Tactics Show, where this week I want to talk about Indy 11 and the 4-4-2 that carried them to two big wins this week and moved them up to 6th place in the East. Now the shape is marked by the narrowness of their wingers. Against Birmingham in a 4-0 victory at the weekend, you saw how Solomon Asante could tuck in a very narrow position and thereby draw the defense in, open up the flanks for an overlapping fullback, and really let Indy build effectively. You're seeing two examples here. In the second one, Asante is sticking into that channel and making the run himself that really breaks the defense. He's choosing the moment to spring wide and get that angle for himself to cross into. And you saw a variation of that shape in Indy's win against Miami at the weekend. Jack Blake was on the right wing this time around, and he opened up overlaps from Douglas Martinez, while Harrison Robledo played in much more of a true wing position on the other flank. Again, though, you're going to see the impact of Blake's narrowness. It's Martinez getting a cross that's barely cleared off the goal line in this first example. And in the second case, you're seeing Sebastian Velasquez, striker, interchange with narrow Blake, opening up yet another crossing angle for Douglas Martinez to play into. This is really the route in which Indy finds themselves to be most effective, but it extends to the defensive half as well. Blake is tucking inside there, fully going over to the left in order to get a tackle. Meanwhile, Velasquez drops in, and you're once again seeing how defense creates offense and opens up that cross for Martinez. And Martinez is an interesting case. He played striker against Birmingham and used a lot of that wide sensibility to his game to really extend out as needed. Now, at the end of the game with a lead, Indy moved into a really proper classic 4-4-2 with wide wingers. You're seeing Solomon Asante represent that here. He had a couple assists against the Legion, and he's doing the job defensively, shoring up Indy against another team in a 4-4-2. And because of these variations, because of Mark Lowry's choices, Indy is in the driver's seat to get into the postseason.
Now,
I like that driver's seat pun. That was good.
Gotta get the race car stuff in there with Indy always.
constantly. Before we get too far in the tactics show, because I'm really torn on it, is Indy in the red versus Miami a good uniform matchup or an awful one?
I'm a big fan of the all red. That was Indy in their inaugural season rocked a red kit and then took forever to bring it back. So I'm here for the throwback value. It's a lot of color going on, but I found it to be watchable, and I'd rather that than something where they're too similar, probably.
Because, like, I kept watching it and I was like, on one hand, I really like this. On the other hand, this looks like an oversaturated, like, NFL color rush game, and I'm really confused.
I also love Color Rush, so I guess I'm biased here.
I mean, I'm a Bengals fan.
It's better than
so-
a corn. It's better than a corn kit. I will say that. If you saw the 11 corn cob whatnot going on,
They did what Omaha was afraid to do.
Are we going so far as to say that the corn kit is brave?
I mean,
yes.
would you wear it?
I guess.
Phil, would you wear it?
Would I wear it?
Would you wear it?
No, I would not wear
Then
it.
that's
I would not
bravery.
wear the
They are
Indy-
brave. They are brave.
There's one person who wouldn't wear it, therefore they are brave. That's my favorite logic of all time ever put forward on this show.
I've been teaching 3-year-olds. Look, this is the logic they use. I'm just in 3-year-old brain. Look.
I feel like a 3-year-old would love the corn kit.
Oh, the 3-year-olds love the corn kit. They would be singing the song, not very well, but they would love it. Oh man. But the actual tactics part of it. Indy is finally starting to look like the Indy team that we thought they would be. But, I have to put the caveat of like, hey, yeah, this is against two teams that really they kind of should be doing that too. But also, all you need is a hot streak to get going, right?
I mean, this is the first time since the tail end of last season that they've won back-to-back games, and Indy 11 helped deliver Birmingham's largest deficit defeat since their inaugural season in 2019 when they lost to Hartford and New York Red Bulls too. And I mean, if you look at Indy's kind of remaining schedule ahead, you really have a rather favorable run-in of games all the way up to San Antonio at the last match of the season. There's wins on that kind of record to kind of remain for the year.
Yeah, Ryan. There was one worse. It was Pittsburgh 2019. We lost 7-0. There was one worse. It always gets worse for me. But yeah, that was a playoff. Doesn't count. Yeah, no, I mean, it really like Indy, especially. I'll speak more on the Birmingham game because obviously I've watched all that. When I only watched the first 60 minutes of the Miami game before I had to do something else. But it was incredible that Indy, and I say this every time that they do it, when Lowry ball works right, it's the prettiest thing that you'll see in the USL. I stand by that. Lowry ball is the prettiest thing you'll see in the USL when it works right. And it was working really, really well. And especially in the Legion game, and they did it less from what I saw in the Miami game. They were just putting in crosses like crazy, just cross after cross after cross after cross, which I felt like in years past, Lowry didn't really utilize as much. And I feel like it was a nice little just switch up because not everything needs to be, go outside and then bring it in narrow and play it short and just try to get, basically tiki-taka up to the front. Like him working fast, holding possession, and then just launch the ball in the middle. Nobody was prepared for it, and it was such a nice wrinkle that I think if he keeps that for the rest of the year, I mean that's going to be really fun to watch out of this Indy team.
Yeah, I think what I appreciated was the growth on that kind of baseline Lowry ball that was so focused on possession, sometimes to a detriment. Indy was only 50 to 55% winners in the possession battle in these two games. They showed a real ability when they wanted to build up the tempo a little bit, break out on the counter. As I mentioned in the tactics show, the use of Solomon Asante in different moments where his skill set would be most effective, because let's face it, he doesn't have the legs at this point to go 90 minutes on a Wednesday and a Saturday. I think the use of Douglas Martinez was really inspired. The fact that he went up at striker against the Legion, then played it right back against Miami. He's figuring it out belatedly. And this is a team that, if you look at the squad again, should be up there at the highest heights of the East. If they get there late, I don't think we should hold that against Lowry, because there's a lot to figure out, and there's some older to more tired legs in general. For me, this kind of felt like the week that this team has been waiting for and they can finally build on. They'll prove me wrong, because they always tend to do so, but I'm excited as someone with a bit of an Indy fandom.
I think to your point, John, like, we always figured that Lowry at Indy was going to click at some point. It's clicked the last two matches, and like, yeah, the momentum feels positive for really the first time. I don't want to, maybe since Lowry has been there, like he's maybe building up a little bit of a head of steam. Not to use a train pun, but we're headed into an Indy Locomotive match day, which inevitably the narrative is there. So anyways, I think it was interesting to see the fact that he did leave possession behind against Birmingham, in terms of like, yeah, Legion had more of the ball, but they denied. Well, I would say they didn't deny as much as they denied Miami, but the game against Miami felt more akin to what we saw from Lowry in El Paso, which not a boatload of chances for Indy, but Miami barely had a sniff the entire game. And it was like, if anyone's finding the winner, it's probably Indy. And that was how Locomotive used to feel. And if he can get Indy playing that way consistently, then yeah, it's a hell of a dangerous team to come up against in the playoffs.
Unless anybody has anything else, let's quickly jump over to that Western Conference. And there was a whole lot of stuff that's happened in this Western Conference. Let's first off start off with our defending champions. And look, San Antonio are just proving that San Antonio are San Antonio. I don't think anybody was ever confused about that. But in case you were curious, San Antonio is still good. This is also just kind of, I want to celebrate San Antonio in this game, but this also just feels like me continuing me just having a slight disdain towards New Mexico, which isn't fair, but also they are consistently having the best attendance in the league, and they can just not figure it out on the field. And they have players, they have so many talented players that it feels like if they were in anywhere else but Albuquerque, they would be winning and winning a lot. Maybe I'm totally off on that, but every single time I watch them, it's like there's flashes, and it's like, why isn't this working here?
There was a stretch a couple weeks ago where I was pretty confident that they had figured it out, where Quill had, dealing with the injuries to Wien and Christian Ava very early in the season, it took a bit, and given the managerial change too, but the way that he had Nicky Hernandez is this box-to-box number 10, figuring it out with Daniel Bruce up top at striker, which was a really inspired choice. It felt like this team had kind of moved on from what had become a very stale style, and then that's gone out the window in the past 2-3 games. San Antonio is a wagon when they want to be. The press, they figured it out in a really meaningful way, going with pretty much one holding midfielder and two more advanced number 8, number 10 types now. Ridizzi here with 2 really nice goals and Patino back on the score sheet. So I don't want to like disparage them or New Mexico too much, because this is a tough game. But the West bubble right now is so tight, and unless you get like a full-blown continued collapse from a certain other team nearby in Texas, it's going to be a tough ask for them to get in.
I mean, certainly.
Go for it, Ryan.
I was saying, like, it certainly is a best of times, worst of times situation for New Mexico at home. I mean, their last home game before this loss to San Antonio was a 3-0 victory against Sacramento. And then since then, they've lost 1-0 to Orange County, 2-1 to Hartford, which you really shouldn't be doing at this point right now. And then if you kind of just look at the remaining schedule they have in front of them, these are some really tough games, including a stretch of 2 weeks in September where they do Sacramento, Pittsburgh, and Louisville all in a row.
I just want to say to San Antonio fans, enjoy the ride with Rita Zuhir. This kid is going places. He's if Montreal don't figure out a way to make him a force in MLS, then there's something wrong with that club, and they need I don't know, whatever, another rebrand potentially. So anyways, the bottom line, the 2 goals, like you said, John, like Zuhir's goals are out of this world, and he scored another, he scored a banger in El Paso. He scored a couple of bangers in New Mexico. The kid is just like flying right now, and at 19 years old, looks every bit the full package. So yeah, enjoy the season with him, because I'm sure that he's off to bigger and better things in the future. Not to disparage San Antonio before you come for me, San Antonio fans, but you're absolutely getting the most out of what is a player who's destined for great things, I think, because he just looks unbelievable, and the 2 goals here were off the charts good.
I got the notification from USL Championship, like banger out in like Albuquerque or whatever it was, and I was like, they like to throw out that word pretty loosely. Like anybody scores from like the top of the box, and it's like banger. So I was like, okay, let's see what it is, and I was just like, oh my god, like it was gross. It was disgusting, and it's one of those things that we kind of talk about, not disparaging New Mexico. I mean, San Antonio won the same exact game, first game of the year against Oakland, where 2 bangers and a end of the game goal wins 3-1 versus Oakland. That's how they began their year. That's just what San Antonio does, and it's not like they got lucky. They always find themselves in these positions where they just win. My thing is, and Ryan, oh my god, Ryan touched on it. And it's the thing that blows my mind, how New Mexico is so bad at home. When you consider their fan base, the elevation, like people don't realize how that Albuquerque up there, especially compared to some of these teams that are way down here, like that's a big change. And I hate to say it, they should be used to the field conditions. Like, it doesn't make sense on why they can't win at home. Like they have they have everything that you should have for the formula to win at home. And you would think, well, if they can't win at home in those conditions, that means obviously they're losing away too. But they're not as much. They're better away than at home, and it makes 0 sense to me.
I mean, 7 more home games for New Mexico in the regular season this year, and they do have a chance from August 23rd through September 2nd of a run of 4 games in a row where they do play at home against Oakland, Tulsa, Las Vegas Lights, and Charleston. But they have to pick up kind of the results there, just because when you get into September, it has a much tougher schedule for them, and that's just not what you want to look for in a team who's currently 4 points outside the playoffs.
With a game in hand, which is why you can never say die with that team.
Oh, man. Let's go ahead and move on, and let's stay out on the Western Conference side, where San Diego, if you have not been paying attention, they've been slipping a little bit, like just a little bit. And if you have not been paying attention, you would think that they are a lot higher than where they are, but they drop another game where they lose 1-0 to Memphis, which, I mean, Memphis on paper looks great, but they got really cold really fast. And from here, I mean, what do we have to make of this?
They had a very call the ambulance, but not for me game on Wednesday with a comeback win against Loudoun that took like a really offensive minded late substitution to get Matiti as like a wing back and just go into a pure front 5 and see what you can do. And that, again, barely got them a win against Loudoun, who if you're only getting that against the youngest team in the league, traveling cross country on a Wednesday, maybe a sign of bad things. I do want to say, like, credit to Memphis, who went through a really tough stretch for about a month there, rapidly figuring things out. I think defensively, Stephen Glass has realized there has to be more of a balance. What he got with Leston Paul getting healthy and putting in a great shift as a number 6 was massive against Guido. Dylan Borkzak, who was somebody who kind of was just out to pasture for much of the early season, showed great resolve on the wing. Getting Aiden McFadden on loan at right back, subtly a huge move. McFadden was someone who like tore up the East with Atlanta United too. Never got a fair shout with the senior Atlanta United side. He knows Glass from their time together with that team. He's going to be a difference maker down the stretch, and he gives them much more of an offensive threat than you get from Reese Buckmaster, who, while very good, just isn't quite like the overlapping, getting into the box kind of guy that McFadden is. So plenty of good signs from Memphis. San Diego without Nick Moon, just a worse team.
And Drew Romig, clean sheet as well. So yeah, I mean I think this San Diego side's been prone to this sort of performance where they like outshoot their opponent. But it doesn't feel that way because the chances they create aren't of like very high quality, and it can just feel kind of meh sometimes, where, you know, a few weeks ago we're talking about how they're like just absolutely lighting the league on fire, and like Adrian Perez is putting in these like crazy performances and just like torching people. And there's just too many players on this team that go hot and cold, and they all seem to do it all at the same time. So yeah, I think Loyal are still, for me, like good enough on average to be comfortably in that middle of the pack of the like top end of the playoff teams. But yeah, this is one where you kind of think Memphis coming cross country like should suffer a little bit, and Memphis made it look relatively straightforward against Loyal, which I think is, yeah, a credit to Memphis on the one hand, and just another notch in Loyal's like kind of inconsistent belt.
I almost am getting the vibes of San Diego Loyal this year compared to what New Mexico was last season, that they never really put themselves in a position of danger of ever dropping out of the playoff line. And you're looking at that right now with San Diego, who's still 8 points above the playoff line. But it's just, it never seemed like they got together like a really strong, consistent run of play. And it really cost them once they got to the playoffs, that they just didn't seem like they were ready for it. And this is a team that, by all accounts at the start of the season, we were saying it's one of the 3 knock-on teams to be hosting a playoff game. And now they look at risk of dropping below the likes of Orange County and potentially Colorado Springs.
You know, with this, and you mentioned Romig getting another, or getting his clean sheet here. I think recently he just got another one too. It was a 0-0. Well, it was the Loudon game.
The 11 a.m. game, yeah.
Which that shouldn't count. That's not a clean sheet. That does not count.
But hey, the campers loved it.
But the turn of Romig has been really interesting to me, because the last time we saw Billamede, it was a 1-1 draw to Sacramento, and he has disappeared. He is just gone. And you have to remember, Legion fan, I'm just going to hands up and admit, don't like Memphis that much, right? But for the caliber of player that Billamede was, and the kind of level that he was brought in at, for him to be just unceremoniously just swept away and act like it didn't happen for a long time. Romig was easily the worst goalkeeper in the league. Like, every metric said that he was awful. And then for him to be unceremoniously just swept away, and now Romig starts playing out of his mind, it's hard for me to think of a worse like transfer or like signing this year.
I've got another U.S. national team goalkeeper, Cody Cropper, who literally retired because he was so bad. Like, at least Hamid is ostensibly still on the roster at this point. And Hamid,
Yeah.
Hamid was actually good when he played. Like, Cropper was so bad that he got benched and just decided to stop being a professional athlete.
I mean, that's what happened to me too. But but you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this Memphis team is a bit of a fever dream constantly because I mean, yeah, I had to watch them play Loudon at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Actually, it was 10 a.m. for me, and then they lose 4-2 after they're up 2-0 at like halftime to Pittsburgh. And then they do whatever happened against Orange County, where midway through they were just like, we're going to all get sent off now. And now these last couple of games, they're like, okay, let's beat a pretty decent indie team. Let's go ahead and go out to San Diego and beat them. Like, they're just kind of a fever dream, and I don't know what they are still.
I feel like so much of the East is. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say the whole like Twilight Zone sliding doors moment of the Philip Goodrum Rodrigo da Costa transfer just continues in that Memphis have lost 4 games since acquiring Rodrigo da Costa, and Tulsa have lost 5 since acquiring Philip Goodrum. Goodrum has 9 goal involvements for Tulsa in that time, and da Costa has 8 goal involvements for Memphis in that time. So it is like they are just neck and neck down the stretch in who's the better transfer. But I mean, worth mentioning that Rodrigo da Costa on the score sheet again for Memphis. So whatever it was about that transfer, I guess it benefited both players. I don't know.
Both of these teams are just so inconsistent, and I think that applies to Louisville, to Charleston, to Birmingham. Like, no one in the East other than Pittsburgh and usually Tampa Bay really is consistently a threat, which is just an odd thing this season in the conference that usually has a team or two that's really out there dominant.
Which, you kind of talk about Tulsa. We talk about coach drama. I mean, the way things are going in Tulsa, like they are shaking things up. Best players and like arguably some of the best players in club history kind of thrown to the side. Like, we're trading you, we're getting rid of you. We want this piece, we want this piece. They are really shaking it up. But boy, some of the former Tulsa players are out there liking some things. They're on the socials and they are not being very secretive of what they thought Tulsa was like towards the end. And it's been interesting. It's been really interesting because, I mean, when I talked about Bill Meade being unceremonious, some of these trades, some of these transfers are about as unceremonious as it gets. They say, "Thank you for your contribution. We'll love you forever. Now bring us Philip Goodrum." Like, it's been kind of insane to see just how easy it is to they've discarded players.
What's interesting with Tulsa right now is that, like, it'd be one thing if they did all of this shakeup to like really rocket up in the same spot that they were finished last season, basically outside the playoff picture, and they're just barely holding on to the playoff picture right now at a -10 goal differential and only 3 points above the playoff line, having no wins in their last 3 games. You have to wonder, did they shake things up too much and just lost the consistency that they could have had coming into the season?
I mean, I think the issue there was that whatever Blair Gavin wanted to do in the preseason, basically his entire defense got injured in the first month, and he just had to decide, we're ripping it up from the roots. We're going with this weird 3-4-3 thing that we're doing now that's a little bit off balance. They've responded well, and the fact that they're holding level while moving into the new era, I think is a good sign. But to do it in a way where you're alienating some people around the league, I can't speak to it, but definitely questions to be asked in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and move on. Phil, I'm sorry.
We gotta We got to do it. Rip the Band-Aid off, Kaler. Just say it. Say the numbers.
5-0. 5-0. Phoenix wins over El Paso. A Phoenix team who, the game before, there were some moments. The big one I think everybody's going to circle is the Rios Novos moment at the end of the other match, which that was against San Antonio, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they respond very strongly against, I mean, frankly, and if you want to hear more about it, it's hashtag ad seriously loco, listen to it. But like, this is the El Paso team that went from really good to really not.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if I had to boil it down, this performance in particular was kind of like the culmination of what has been a downward trajectory, not just in like first it was in just like fitness and form, and then it was in like a mentality that followed, I think. And this was kind of the cherry on top of a terrible a terrible run, the worst in club history now, at 9 games. And in fact, in his final 2 seasons at Locomotive, Mark Lowry lost only 7 games. So they are now winless in 9. So that shows you how, and they've lost 9 games this season while winning 9. So the bottom line for El Paso is that there was one major threat going into this Phoenix game with the sending off of Arteaga against San Antonio, and that was Danny Trejo in a central position. And I talked about it like on this show when I locked Phoenix for this game. I said the USL or pro referees did Guerra's job for him by sending off Arteaga and forcing Guerra to play Trejo as a striker. And the second that he did, he makes these runs that Locomotive, despite the fact that they switched to a back 3, and in theory could have basically placed a body on Trejo at all times, they just couldn't get near him. And the way that he was making runs in behind, he was just absolutely slicing Locomotive apart. All 3 of Phoenix's first 3 goals are down to that. He makes these bending runs in behind, and they just could not deal with it. McHugh, Yuma, like it didn't matter who it was. They just weren't able to stick with him. He makes that inside out run for the first goal where he receives the ball in behind and then crosses for Manjoma to tap in. The second goal's all him, and there's a little bit of probably Benny Diaz question, which Diaz probably has his weirdest performance of the season, in which I'm fairly confident he was trying to be sent off to escape like what was happening. He ran the full length of the field to go fight, and the Phoenix player's name is escaping me. It actually might have been Manjoma towards the end of the game, where there was some sort of shove in midfield or like a late challenge, and he was yelling at Lucho. And anyways, Diaz travels the entire length of the field on a yellow card to go fight and does not receive a second yellow. And I was like, this man's trying to be sent off. Anyways, it was just bad all around. The change in shape for Locomotive just didn't accomplish what they were trying to do, even though you could kind of see what it was. And they're getting to the point, like the bottom line with Locomotive is that they played through that 12-game unbeaten run. They played essentially an unchanged 11, with a couple of exceptions of like Miles Lyons in for Mark Navarro. That was essentially it. And then there were basically no other changes. The second that they had any fitness problems, Petrovic's injury, Liam Rowe's injury, having to rest Eric Calvillo at different points, Lucho in and out, Josue Aron Gomez in and out, they haven't been able to find that same fluency at any point since they've had to make those changes. And in the midst of all that, they sell their best player, I mean, the most consistent player of the season, back to a club in biggest transfer fee this season. So yeah, the club is in a really difficult spot right now. Clearhout wasn't on the sidelines for this one because he was sent off in Miami for basically abusing the referee after Yuma gave away the penalty. The bottom line is like it's becoming to the point where the club has some like serious decisions to make about the direction of the team, and like whether right now, like it does fully feel like it is a, pardon the pun, train wreck. And like, is it salvageable to a point where it's worth like continuing to invest like in this long-term plan? Or if you're going to announce the transfer of a guy 34 days after you announced his contract extension, like what is the plan? Like, is there a plan? And just like right now, it just feels like it's just not there. So yeah, this was bad. And like definitely the first time in all of this that the fan base, despite this really bad run, this was the first time that the fan base got really, really negative, because it just felt like now, like how Miami or RGV felt like a low, like maybe rock bottom. Miami felt like maybe rock bottom at 4-0. This is definitely rock bottom away to one of your biggest rivals. When you're a team that, you know, at one point in the season was thinking maybe we can get home field advantage in the playoffs. And that's it. And now I'll shut up.
I think for me, what stood out on the Phoenix side was a really killer capability to exploit the weaknesses that they found within the Locomotive shape. You mentioned that they moved into this back three, back five, and Phoenix was ruthless, pushing Carlos Harvey on that right side up from this wide center back spot into more of a fullback role offensively. Yuma, McHugh, Hines, whoever it was on the left, was not ready for the level of fluidity and interchange that Rising had there. What was interesting from the Rising perspective was that they were without Kevon Lambert, who would have traditionally taken on that role. Seems like he's probably going to Real Salt Lake, which kind of a loss of a league legend there. But I mean, credit to Harvey, credit to Armanakis, who didn't get on the score sheet, but every run he made, every pass he made was really crucial in that kind of right half space. And to do it without Arteaga, like you said, with Trejo in the middle, you got to be asking questions going forward with the team selection. As good as Manuel has been in that spot this season, I think Trejo just gives you so much more. I think he puts defenses on the back foot with so much more regularity. It was a great game, certainly for Phoenix, and this is a good problem to have down the stretch, but questions to be asked in a positive way.
I mean, what's interesting so much for this, and Phil, you touched base on it during your portion, was that it was a 12-match unbeaten run that El Paso was on, and that they've now been 9 winless since then. And like, it's been 63 days since they last won a game, and that was June 14th against Las Vegas. It's like it's gotten to a point where we're looking at a team that we thought was going to be kind of up there in the top 4 of the Western Conference, and now they've basically dropped down to a -8 goal differential, with New Mexico and RGV nipping at their heels 4 points out of the playoff spot. Like, if you look ahead for El Paso's schedule, their next 2 games are absolutely essential. One for just a self-confidence of, we need to go out and beat Mark Lowry, our former manager, and the other of, it's Hartford. We have to beat Hartford of all teams. Just
lads, it's Hartford.
Like, I mean, it's not getting any easier for El Paso. Their final 6 games of the season is Sacramento, Phoenix, Charleston, San Diego, Memphis, and Oakland. And you don't want to run into that gauntlet needing essential points out of that. And it's getting to a point where it's like really challenging, especially for a manager appointed this season, on, do we go through the process again this offseason, or do we try and see this out?
You know, I don't want to move away from El Paso and Phoenix too much, but this match had a moment, and this also Phoenix team had a moment last week that talked about was Rios Novo. And now this last week, I think it was against El Paso. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, where, you know, I think it was El Paso keeper tries to play it out from the back, goes straight to Danny Trejo, and he like misses, screws it up somehow. I don't, anyway. But there has been a big trend in the USL, especially in the last, like, I would say 2 months, that it seems like a lot of teams are moving to this quote unquote modern keeper, which is basically any keeper that's going to play it out from the back, right? You want your keeper to be higher line, be a part of the team, be essentially a third or a fourth center back, depending on how you play. Most teams that do this tend to have a four-man back line, but that's irrelevant to the conversation because we've seen this move through a lot. And, teams like Phoenix, right? Phoenix does this perfectly because Rios Novo, and he is about as modern of a keeper as you get. He is just an outfield player that puts gloves on. But the thing is, he's on the shorter side. He has to do that. That's his game because that's the only way he's a professional footballer, right? And he had his horrible moment against San Antonio. But when you consider how often he has the ball at his feet, it's a bit surprising he hasn't lost control of it more, to be honest. That said, I mean, the USL has had this trend of these modern keepers that, hey, we're going to play it out from the back. Our goalkeeper is going to be a part of this back line. And I would say every single one of them, except for I would say maybe 3 keepers in this league can actually do that. And it's becoming a tactical detriment to a lot of these teams that they're trying to play it out from the back. First, most of the keepers in this league don't have the technical ability to do it. They're fine at it, but they don't have that true technical ability. And even if you do, how many true ball carrying center backs are there in this league? Even if your goalkeeper gets it off, how many of the center backs do you truly trust to dribble up the field? And I don't understand why teams keep doing it.
I don't know. I like even with like this abysmal run, I will still like defend Benny Diaz in the sense that like I think he's been one of the like most consistent players for Locomotive, and like I think he's also, I think what he did in Phoenix, like specifically with a couple of really weird things where it's an intentional handball outside the box. Like he's honestly lucky to not be sent off for it because he straight up slides down and catches the ball and then lets go of it. And so anyways, like Benny, in terms of playing that like modern sweeper, his distribution, I would put up there with any keeper in the league. So I think he was for a long period of time like a very consistently important part of Locomotive's game plan. And like I think to a certain point, like now that things feel so broken offensive, because I didn't even touch on like the offensive woes for Locomotive, which are they just don't score goals anymore. Like I think Josue Aron Gomez has 3 goals in this 9-game, or 3 goal involvements in this 9-game winless run. Lucho has 2, both from the penalty spot. And Petar Petrovic, 0. Dennis Costitian, 0. Literally anyone else, 0. So it's just literally like a couple of guys. Ricardo Zacharias hasn't scored since April. So yeah, it's a just lean time right now, and because things feel so broken, I think like Benny is like suffering along with the team, and I think some of the weird stuff he does against Phoenix is driven by frustration more than his actual performance. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Evan Newton because yeah, that was a total mismatch of style versus like player, whereas I think Benny is actually quite a good sweeper and has done really well this season. He's just I think in this case, like the goals that Locomotive concede up until the final 2, which is like Yuma leaving a leg out and then like spin in the box, basically unchallenged spin in the box, but for the last one. But the first 3 are all about the center backs and have, in my opinion, like little to do with Benny.
I mean, Diaz is one of those guys that I would have lumped in that conversation of can do it, right? But I mean, I've seen a couple of times, like we see Koke Vegas do it a good bit. He's one that he scares me every now and then. Like every now and then he does it and it terrifies me. But like Rios Novo, perfect at it. Benny Diaz is another one that I've seen do a little bit more. I always mispronounce his name, and it's It's not great. But Zimla, is that Luce's keeper? His last name scares me. Germans scare me. He does it from time to time, and I've never liked it when he does it. I mean, unfortunately, I've watched Birmingham do it, and like Matt Van Okel, I'm sorry, brother. Like, we do not have the facilities for that big man. Like, we can't be doing it. But it's not his fault. Like, it's it's what coaches want, and there's other coaches that are doing it too. And it just doesn't make sense because most of these keepers, it's not in their locker. Like, yeah, Evan Newton last year, Hutchinson, and how many weeks in a row did I scream that it was not Evan Newton's fault, that I was like blue in the face? It's like, it's not his fault that Hutchinson's putting him in a horrible position constantly. I feel like a lot of times we're seeing these goalkeeping errors and the goalkeeper is being left out to dry. Like, oh, because we're asking them to play a high line. Well, guess what? Now Waite's being chipped from halfway. Like, I mean, how else do you think Aiden Quinn gets that? Makes that shot back in the 80s. That goal doesn't go in because, I mean, Waite hasn't left the mouth of the goal. That's where he goes. It just, I feel like the level of goalkeeping in this league's good. I think it's actually one of the higher spots of this league is the top level of goalkeeping. You could take it to MLS and it plays. But also a lot of these guys, they're just not built for that style of play.
Yeah, if you actually look at the percent of passes by a keeper that goes long, which is a decent way to see, like, are they trying to get out there and possess? League-wide for goalkeepers, that's down 5% year over year. San Diego and Phoenix are really the two teams that do it the most in terms of having their keepers be very active in possession. But, I mean, it's a trend across the league. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's been harmful. Oddly enough, Birmingham is actually the team year over year that's had the biggest change. They are much more possessive with what they're trying to do with their goaltenders. So just something to note. I tend to think that it's for the better and that most teams are smart and judicious in what they're doing in regards to the positioning of their keepers. But it does hurt you every now and again. And I think that Rios Novo concession the other week for Phoenix that blew the game in extra time against Phoenix Rising, or rather against San Antonio, was the big example of when things can go wrong.
Well, let's go ahead quickly move on to League One of NoCo versus Omaha. And Northern Colorado has just like fallen off a cliff. Like, it has all gone wrong. And, if you're someone who doesn't really follow League One, like you kind of understand League One, sort of, Union Omaha is not the team that you think they are. Like, I feel like if you've been listening to the USL show, you know that. But also, they're not the team that you think they are traditionally. And this, like, Northern Colorado match, like, it feels like a traditional League One game where Union Omaha beats Northern Colorado, but Northern Colorado isn't that great. But Northern Colorado just went on this just long stretch of being outright bad, just awful to watch. They have a thriller versus Lexington, and then they are thrashed by North Carolina, thrashed by Charlotte. And it looks like they're, getting something out of this Union Omaha match. And it was just brutal to watch. And I should be singing the praises of Union Omaha here, but it just feels more like it's a continuation of woes for Northern Colorado.
Ironically enough, it seems like both teams have switched in form, that Northern Colorado have lost their last 4 games and Union Omaha has won their last 4 games and is somehow second in the league right now. But yeah, I mean, you're seeing a NoCo team that's like really dropped down the table from a side that, by all accounts, at the start of the year, we were saying this is going to be a top 3 team that should be hosting a home playoff game this year. And it's just kind of collapsed for all of it. And I think it would actually be a really interesting discussion with, given where North Carolina is relative to the rest of the league, at what they should be the favorites, but at what percentage would you say that they are the favorites to win League One this year, especially off the heels of their announcement that they'll be promoted back at the end of the season? And at what percentage would you say North Carolina should be winning the league? Because you could honestly, I'd put it at least 30%.
And just in general, I mean, my brain still thinks that it's going to be Ford Madison or the way that Charlotte's been playing. I mean, when Charlotte's hot, I don't think you can touch them. Dane Kelly, good. Like, I hate to broadly put it out there, but I mean, that's been the story of the entire USL forever. But I mean, Northern Colorado, I mean, they have the Golden Boot leader right now. They have a guy in Arthur Rogers, which should not be in League One, and frankly, I don't think should even be in the championship. The fact that he's still floating down there is ridiculous. Like, he's an MLS caliber guy. That's just, he's so good. And it doesn't make a lot of sense of what's going on with this Northern Colorado team. They created a little bit more chances this time as opposed to other matches where it just wasn't happening. But their defense feels like it's crumbling. Meanwhile, Union Omaha, earlier this year, they were kind of playing around with, felt like trying to figure out what their formation was going to be. They were kind of sticking with this 3-man back line, and it didn't work. Then they went to like this 4-2-3-1, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. They went to this 4-3-3, and sometimes it worked. They went to this like 4-3-1-2. In these last few matches, they went, hey, we are doing the 4-2-3-1. And especially in this match, you had Doyle sitting back pretty deep and was just true defensive midfielder and was just getting distribute, get and distribute, get and distribute. And it was really fun to watch and seeing, Omaha say, hey, we are going to let our guy do his thing. We're going to distribute this ball and we're going to do it from deeper and then let our talent up top do its thing. I mean, I think it was a really good continuation of a change for Union Omaha, which I think has really spurred on that streak that you mentioned, Ryan.
I will say that there are two extremely borderline penalties given for Omaha in this game. And so I don't know, like, I think Northern Colorado have been victims of like classic League One-ing the last two games where you have a Lexington side that like hasn't scored a lot of goals this season, score 4 goals, and then and a couple bangers in there as well. And then you have in this one, Omaha get 2 like extremely borderline refereeing decisions that they still fought back from, but in the end, Omaha able to find the winner. So yeah, one of those things where I think there is a little bit to NOCO's like dip in form, but I'm also willing to cut them a little bit of slack because it feels like League One, like they're going through what every League One team has to go through at some point in their history, which is weird stuff is going to happen to you in this league, and there are going to be times where you kind of sit back and you're like, I don't know what's going on. I just hope it ends soon. And now they're maybe they can turn it around.
I mean,
as far as those penalties go, it's so Eamon Zayed, obviously the manager in Northern Colorado, guy hasn't tweeted in about 2 months. And then very pointedly today, he's quote tweeting the news about that official in the Premier League who got suspended. And he says, the only way to move forward is if there are repercussions for the officials. Those decisions could get a coach sacked in the future. So, I mean, I don't want to read the tea leaves, but I don't think he was really talking about Wolves in that regard. Like, I think he had something else in mind.
Big Wolves fan, Eamon Zayed.
He's just angling for a Neil's job.
In terms of, I think, the dynamics of these teams, there was always the question, can Trevor Amon continue with that hot form as he is leading the Golden Boot race? Like, he's a good forward, but that good? Questions to be asked. And then in the other side, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kaylor. When this Omaha team gets Connor Doyle deep in their spray and passes, that's when they click. You've seen it time and again. There's been a hesitance to really liberate him there. good things happen, and it's something they ought to look to going forward.
And especially with Northern Colorado and like had Phil said, these 4 losses, if you take that away, they've only lost 1 game all season without this stretch of 4 games on the losing streak. That this is still a good team here, or that has the highest goal differential in the league right now. That it really does just take a little, basically a moment that you just need to turn things around and you forget all about it. I mean, if you look back from last season, there was a stretch of 6 games in a row that Tormenta didn't win a single one at the start of the year, but then they ended the year on a 6-match unbeaten run, and it basically carried them to a league title, where I think especially in this league, it takes a lot of momentum into account for the teams that are successful.
We talk about this almost every time we talk about League One, and this is something that we really reiterate over and over and over again, is because majority of the fan base that listens to the USL show is built on the championship. We know that, right? So, having to explain what League One is, I think more than any other really soccer league I can think of, this League One feels kind of like March Madness in a way of it's whoever gets hot at the right time. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the 1 seed coming in. I know the championship is a bit like that, like the 1 seed, except for last year. The 1 seed never wins at all because that's just the way it happens. But League One is that utmost chaos of teams just go streaking. Things just happen. And then get to the dance. If you're hot going into the big dance, like, hey, anything can happen. League One really is like that. And, I don't really know what causes it. I wish there was something I could say, oh, this is what causes League One chaos, but I got nothing. But it's one of those things that if you're not a League One fan, seriously watch it, because teams get so streaky, and it's one of the streakiest leagues I've ever seen. No one's ever consistently good in this league, or even really fully consistently bad. I mean, even Fuego has some really good moments this year after we were not sure if they were going to survive. And we were like, are they going to have a player? Like, are we going back to Dave and Buster's so we can find out who's on the team? I don't know. Now they're like, hey, we have a whole training facility. Like, it's a bizarre league.
I always got English Championship vibes from League One, that it really is down to momentum, and every season there's always just that kind of one really weird thing that happens. Like for last season, you could say Sunderland going promotion to the playoffs was among some of those weird things that happened.
Yeah. Fuego announcing that they have a training facility on the way might be the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my life. I want to be honest with you. I'm sorry, Fuego people, if you're listening to this, but I'm also not. Like, we went from announcing players were being signed that were already on the team. Like, they've been playing multiple matches, and they're like, they're here. It's like, we know they've played twice. And, like, with this, it was a bizarre team for just them to say we have a training facility now. They're bizarre. They're just a bizarre team. Anyway, all right, let's go ahead quickly do some predictions. Go ahead, rapid fire through these. Copa Tejas is going to get real toxic this time, because one of the more fun rivalries you can have is going to be San Antonio versus RGV. RGV, a team that, just like every time, they always seem to find themselves in the playoffs, but they never seem to look good while they're getting there. But you know what? You never know in these kind of Copa Tejas matches, but this one's in San Antonio against a San Antonio team who is, believe it or not, good at soccer. Ryan.
Yeah, I'm backing San Antonio to win this one. If you look back through RGV, you have to go back to June 28th, the last time they won a game on the road. I think San Antonio is just that really good team that they'll push on, and especially because they want to pip Sacramento to the top spot of the Western Conference. San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm back in San Antonio in this one for all of those reasons.
Liked what RGV did with the change halfway through against Louisville to push Cabezas from the back line into the midfield and get that draw, but they don't have the juice. It's going to be a San Antonio win, and I locked it.
Yep, I am taking San Antonio as well. Let's go ahead and go to the baseball diamond that is out in Oklahoma. We are going to FC Tulsa taking on Tampa Bay Rowdies. FC Tulsa team that are really good or really not versus the Tampa Bay Rowdies team who, they started to figure it out and then they have little wobbles along the way. Will Tulsa catch a wobble at the right time?
I am backing the Rowdies to win this one. Contrary to their form, they are scoreless and winless in their last 3 road games. You have to go back to July 1st when they beat Las Vegas away from home to find their last win away from Outlang. But I just think Tampa Bay, off the back of their 4-1 victory against Monterey Bay, will get it figured out and will beat Tulsa.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that Tampa Bay picked up a win against Tulsa in Outlang on July 29th, so a little less than a month, and I think they turn around and beat Tulsa at home. I think Tampa Bay maybe built up a little bit of confidence back after losing to Pittsburgh by just kicking around a pretty rough Monterey Bay team. So, yeah, hopefully, I think I'm back in Tampa Bay to get the win in Tulsa.
Yeah, I mean, we're chalk so far, but I'm going Tampa Bay as well. I think they've got too much juice in the midfield with Doherty, Ekrita, Dennis. I think Philip Goodrum is going to have a bad time against Forrest Lasso. Like, Forrest Lasso is going to take his lunch money. So let's go Rowdies here.
Oh, I want to see them fight so bad. Oh, I want to see Goodrum and Forrest Lasso go toe-to-toe because, like,
That's a Cruz Spearman level mismatch of a fight.
the mullet versus, like, man bun, I just want to watch it. Anyway, yeah, I'm taking Tulsa, and I don't know why other than it just is kind of a vibe, and I can't explain it. It's just like when I saw it, I was like, this feels like a Tulsa win. Don't know why. Couldn't explain it. That my only explanation is JJ Williams goes back to Tulsa for this first time, and he never seems to do too well in his return games, and I don't like to former clubs. Don't know what that means. I don't think it means anything. He scores a hat trick confirmed now, but I don't know. Vibe. Tulsa. This next one, I'm praying for the sweet release of death. It's Detroit versus Las Vegas.
What really stuck out to me with this one is Detroit at Keyworth this year in the league has only scored multiple goals once, and that was in their 2-0 victory they had over Louisville a few weeks ago. And then when you look at Las Vegas, away from Cashman, they've only scored multiple goals twice, and that's something that you have to go basically all the way back to the start of the season with March and April, and they only have 1 win away from home this year. For whatever reason, I'm locking Detroit to win this one, but it is basically all the makings of I don't think anyone should be betting the over on this game on goals.
That's fair. I think Detroit gets the win at home. This Vegas team is just not very good, despite the fact that they did beat RGV a couple weeks ago. They just are not showing it. They got blown out by Loudoun at home in their last outing. So, yeah, as Detroit City are at the moment, I just think Vegas are just they are who we thought they were, and they lose in Detroit.
I'm on one here. I went with the Lights just getting the win. I think the pace that they have on the wings with Oteng and Preston is kind of designed to beat what Detroit has with the 4-4-2 they're rocking right now. Detroit doesn't score. Las Vegas, when they want to, can be okay in terms of defensive structure. So going for the upset.
Is it an upset? The only people upset is me that I'm having to watch this.
Taylor, this is your favorite team, Las
You
Vegas
love
Lights.
the Lights.
I do
Lights
love
is
the
your
Lights.
favorite
I
team.
kind of hate that I like the Lights. I really do. I'm a closeted Lights fan, but I am taking Detroit purely just because, like, I don't know, Keyworth. I'll be honest. This one just screams 0-0 draw, but I'm not allowed. Personal rules. I'm not allowed to take a draw. So I think I'm going to predict the actual heat death of the universe before a multi-goal like winner in this one. But I'm going Detroit. I don't like it.
I mean, the way
And
you describe it, it makes it seem like it's going to be that one game you always see every Premier League season, whether it's going to be, it's always like Crystal Palace v Burnley, that and you never see highlights from it. No one's ever asking about that game. They just decide on a scoreline pregame, and it's like, you know what, we're doing 1-1 today, and everyone just nods and goes home.
I mean, I think that Detroit City fans would be ecstatic to see a 1-1 game. It's anything that's not a 0-1 loss. You know, a 1-1 is just the over the moon out in Keyworth. I'll be honest. Let's go over to sunny Irvine, and we are going to go Orange County versus Charleston. Let's see if there's any other refereeing calls, because we all know that the USL loves Orange County.
I'll be really interested how Orange County do in their home match against Pittsburgh tomorrow. I think that's going to really set the tone for this game against Charleston. But you're looking at an OC team who have 4 wins on the bounce right now, and Charleston just historically has always kind of struggled when they go cross country. So I'm taking OC to win this one, but I think a lot of the tone for that match is going to be set tomorrow.
Yeah, same. I think I did pick OC because of Charleston's struggles. I think, whatever happens in Pittsburgh is going to swing it pretty substantially. But 4 wins on the spin for OC, so they've been obviously in really good form, and even before that, they were in pretty decent form. So I mean, yeah, OC is not who we thought they were in this new era, and yeah, so. I think all signs point to OC getting the win.
Yeah, I think OC with their offensive style is pretty uniquely capable of pinning back those fullbacks who are so key to what the Battery do offensively. I think their back line has enough juice in it to stop Augie Williams. I've got OC winning this game.
I also have Orange County winning this one. This one just feels like Orange County. It's not even like they're necessarily the better team. I think they're kind of more even than you would like to. Than I think a lot of people would have thought preseason. I think this is a fairly even matchup, and with it being at home, you hedge the home team. Let's go ahead and let's talk about, what is that? Is that 85? I-85? Knoxville versus Lexington. And this is a Knoxville team which some people were saying could be making it to the USL League One final. They have not done that. And Lexington, who, hey, Lex Ride has been going all the way up. They have been scoring goals. Finally, they are finally starting to look like the team that we kind of thought they could be.
Yeah, this is both kind of an interesting game for both teams, just given where they are in the table, that each one has games already played over the teams who are currently occupying those playoff spots, and neither one is very close to that kind of playoff line. I mean, you look at Knoxville, who are 4 points out from Greenville, Knoxville basically needs to win this game, and Lexington, as they are scoring goals, are still a ways out from that Greenville team of 8 points behind. I do think Lexington gets the win in this one, but seems like a very pivotal moment for both teams, that if they want to make the playoffs, this has to be a win for them.
Yeah, I have Knoxville winning, but they are super all over the place. I think with Lexington, the league winning has intensified in terms of their last 2 matches, right? With like a crazy chaotic win against Northern Colorado, a crazy chaotic win over Fuego. So I'm not buying that they can keep riding this like chaotic energy to anything sustainable. And I think Knoxville, coming off of a creditable win over Forward Madison in Madison, I think they ride that momentum to a victory against their local rivals.
Yeah, I got a draw here. Like a lot of what Knoxville is doing, I mean, that win in Madison was big. What they're getting from Calixture on the midfield is a big deal. Lexington, though, just has figured it out with activating Tate Robertson as a real creative presence, getting the goals from Nico Brown. These teams are going to cancel each other out and get the draw in the end, but I like really the progression from both teams in their expansion years.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a little bit, and the League One hasn't been around very much or very long, so obvious real deal grain of salt here. But except for the first year of League One, I think there's only been one team to make the playoffs in their inaugural season in League One. Obviously, withstanding 2019 that or 2020, whichever one. Um, Withstanding those, that's obviously a different situation. But I I'm taking Lexington here. I'll be honest, I kind of haven't been vibing the One Knox project from the beginning, and now they're losing players, they're releasing players kind of left and right with little to no explanation. And it feels like yes, they get that win over Ford Madsen, but it's clouded in controversy on whether Cheney was on side or not. He was. And meanwhile, Lexington, they're really riding high on some exciting wins. I'm going to take Lexington. And isn't it weird how we consider like Lexington versus Knoxville to be like the local rivalry between the two, but literally Knoxville and Chattanooga, we're just like, don't care.
I mean, it's the Tennessee, Kentucky, SEC vibes.
Yeah, but
No one
like,
cares about the Red Wolves.
that's true. That's true. But like, they're so close, but like Chattanooga and Knoxville are right there, and then we're just like Knoxville's just like that the meme of the guy looking at the girl walking by. It's like Lexington, like it's bizarre. But that is all the predictions for this week. Any final USL thoughts? No, I've talked too much. Let's go ahead, John. Final thoughts for the night.
Yeah. Yesterday night, I went and saw a movie, and in that theater was Eben Moss Backrack, who's cousin Richie in The Bear, and he's in Andor. I was probably the only guy to recognize him. He's like D-list in terms of recognizable celebrities, but kind of blew my mind as somebody who loves The Bear. So shout out to him.
Nice.
That's dope.
Bill?
Yeah, I guess in terms of watching stuff, I've been getting bullied by a lot of people to take on like yet another hobby and begin watching Formula One racing. And I didn't think of myself as much of a motorsports person, and the drama, I'm catching up on Drive to Survive now, and the drama involved is like what we talked about at the top of the show with the Diaz like Pierman beef, or Danny Cruz, sorry, Pierman beef is like,
what beef does Diaz and Pierman have? Like, what?
who knows? It's in his character. That's all I'm saying. No, so I yeah, so those sorts of beefs are like all over the place, and yeah, so I've been successfully bullied by enough of my friends to now and I had another one of my friends say, like, Phil, there's only so many hobbies that one person can have. Like, there is a critical mass, and I was like, I defy that. I can be interested in as many things as I want.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, Formula One's a lot of fun. I've described it to my sister as basically it's a soap opera for men just to watch. That it's just a lot of fun just for all the drama that they have for it. But yeah, I guess I ran and I played pickup soccer today, so my legs are like absolutely beat. And yeah, it's just kind of good way to stay active, and I mainly just play defense just so I don't get in the way of the more talented players at pickup soccer.
That's always my goal. I play keeper, and it's always like, don't kick it to me. I don't do that. And don't expect me to run because I don't do that. Big boy can sometimes get down, and that's all you need from me. Good on you for keeping on running, though. Good on you. For me, teaching hard. That's kind of where I've gotten to. It's hard. But it's pretty rewarding along the way too. So it is what it is. I I'm for people who don't know, and if you hear the thick accent, don't let it shock you. I'm teaching Spanish right now. Um, do I really speak Spanish? More than the students do, and that's all that matters. Um, if you don't know, the Spanish language, the nouns are either feminine or masculine. This like the nouns have like genders to them, if you will. I had a kid unironically get mad at me because I was pushing my quote unquote liberal agenda. Meant it unironically that I was pushing my liberal agenda of teaching the Spanish language, which I had to look at him and say, sit down and shut up. Like no one cares. It was a real moment for me of like, okay, here we are, here we go.
Relatedly, Alan's out tonight because he's facing RICO charges in Georgia.
On that, the USL show kit is officially going to be launching later this week. We'll be telling you about the charity that will be going to. Kit season is going to be releasing some stuff soon, I do believe. I'm really excited for you guys to see the kit in its final touches. And this is an hour and a half show. You can tell I'm back, baby. Thank you all so much. And even though he is not here because might be facing some time, here's Alan.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.